We have a military. Nobody has a military like we do. I rebuilt it, by the way, during my first term. I mean, I think it's one of the best things I did. I rebuilt the military during the first term, and now we're really rebuilding the military, right?
Welcome back to Way Too Early, 5:30 exactly here on the East Coast, 2:30 out west. I'm Ali Vitale, and that was President Trump speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast yesterday in Washington, D.C., touting the U.S. military under his administration. It's the same administration that has ordered the Pentagon to review the effectiveness of women in combat roles more than a decade after their integration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth continues to imply that the military has valued inclusion over efficacy, even though the requirements for women and men in combat roles are the same. The new piece for the 19th features interviews with 4 female combat veterans who want Secretary Hegseth to know they already passed this test. Joining us now, the author of that piece, Marielle Padilla. She's a reporter for the 19th, an independent and nonprofit news outlet, one of my absolute favorites. Marielle, just first, can you talk about why there's a review of women in combat in the first place? What are the reasons that Secretary Hegseth and the Trump administration are giving for this?
You know, it's not entirely clear why now. They did say that they want to make sure that they assess the operational effectiveness of ground combat units 10 years after the department lifted all remaining restrictions on women serving in combat roles. You know, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has made it very clear from the beginning of his tenure that he is suspicious of women in the military. He has said he straight up doesn't believe that women should be in combat roles. He has argued in his book that women make military less lethal, less effective, and fighting more complicated.
Yeah, and this is something he was pressed on during his confirmation hearings, too, including by people like Senator Tammy Duckworth, who more than served her country valiantly. But I wonder if you can then also give us a reality check, because as I was reading your piece, you include this assessment from the Women in the Service Coalition, which shows data that brigade combat teams with women performed at the same level of training proficiencies as teams without women. So talk about what the data actually shows about why you should have women in these spaces, and they earn it in spades.
Right. The Army has already done reviews. From 2019 to 2023, they were collecting data to assess this exact thing, to make sure that adding women into the combat forces didn't impact overall effectiveness. So they found that brigade combat teams with women performed at the exact same level of training proficiency as those that weren't integrated. They found that they actually found that crime trends were higher in teams without women. So one could argue that they proved that having women actually helped teams.
Yeah, exactly. And for so many reasons, too, right? And you've also got a stat in your story about how men who serve with women are more likely to believe that they actually should be there in the first place. And I think that speaks directly to one of the experiences that you highlight in the piece. Let's bring the women themselves to the fore of this, because that was kind of the experience of Michaela Blaska, who you spoke to, about the initial biases that she encountered in her service, and then what reactions she had when her colleagues found out, oh, yeah, you're actually just as strong and just as dedicated as I am.
Right. Over and over again, I talked to these women, and they said they believe that men don't realize what they are capable of until they see what they are capable of. So a lot of these women, they were the first in these spaces, and the men around them, you know, were disrespectful at first, didn't believe in them at first, but they had to meet the exact same physical standards. And they were side by side, you know, in foxholes at night, over mountainous terrains. And it wasn't until after all of these intense trainings that they heard repeatedly from the men around them, oh, wow, I didn't realize you could do that. I'm impressed. And that's something that a lot of these women pointed out. It is important to note that Secretary Hegseth did not serve alongside women while he was active duty. And so a lot of these women think that that could contribute to his views on women.
And that is exactly why we bring up the stat from the earlier study, right? When you have the experience of serving with people and realizing that they can do exactly what you can do, maybe they bring other lived experiences to the table, their role is valid. And so I wonder what these women have said to you about the way that Hegseth is saying we have to review women serving in these kinds of combat roles, when, again, in order to get there, they had to meet the same physical requirements as men.
Right. I think these women are frustrated. I think they're confused. And I mostly feel like they just want everyone to know that the standards are the same. They have been gender neutral. There are no quotas for women. And they just want this point to come across because it's not, it's not being said enough. And they're frustrated because they see progress that the military has made over these past 10 years in trying to integrate women, become a more welcoming space for women. And they just hate to see that culture backslide because of this type of rhetoric coming from the top. And so they are just frustrated, I think is the best word.
Yeah, frustrated. And I think that's why this reporting is so important, so that we can share their experiences and how they are feeling in the aftermath of this review from the Trump administration. Reporter for the 19th, Marielle Padilla, thank you so much for coming on and for doing this work.
Thanks for having me.